Frankie is a 4-year-old boy who is in speech therapy and has difficulty producing the F sound. He is able to produce the sound in some words, but not in all. Frankie was in First Steps, which is a program for birth to 3-year-old children. He was enrolled in speech therapy and occupational therapy. His motor skills are delayed as it took him extra time to crawl, walk, and talk. He has an older brother who was also involved in speech therapy until the age of 5 for a dentalization of the S sound or a lisp. It is important for Frankie to accurately produce the F sound because the F sound is prevalent in his life, where his name has an F in it and so does his sister's, Stephanie. Learning the appropriate F sound will generalize his ability to produce other problem sounds, which will further enhance his intelligibility. Teaching the F sound will generalize his ability to produce the V sound, which is a cognate of the F sound. The F sound is a good sound to start with in therapy because it is stimulable, as he can produce it in other words even if it is not in the appropriate word. This sound will be easy to teach because it is visible as well. There is motivation for Frankie to master the F sound because his friends make fun of him because he cannot say his name correctly. This error is highly consistent in occurrence, which makes it a logical sound to teach. Now we will move on to assessment procedures. The SLP will conduct indirect and direct assessments known as a diagnostic procedure, where she gathers information from Frankie's parents about his speech as well as her own assessment of Frankie in person. This collection of data will be recorded continuously for 2 hours. The indirect assessment portion will include a write-up of the client's case history and an interview with Frankie's parents. Next, the SLP will conduct a direct assessment where she evaluates Frankie's speech and language production with a common standardized test known as the Goldman-Bristow Test of Articulation, or GFTA. The observer reliability is high because the speech pathologist follows certain guidelines that the speech pathologists know following when administering the test. After the test has been administered, the SLP will take a language sample by asking him questions about his day to evaluate his conversational speech, and specifically the production of the F sound. Now for the program design and implementation strategies. Frankie's treatment program will last 1 school semester where he will meet with a clinician for 1 hour, twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays. The clinician will use a shaping technique to teach Frankie the F sound, and he will gradually be able to correctly produce it in words and conversation. The clinician will begin with teaching the client to articulate the sound and produce it in isolation, then in syllables, and finally in words. The final goal is that Frankie will produce the F initial words, where the word begins with F sound, with 80% accuracy given pictures and activities. Response data will be collected by the clinician during the sessions by measuring how many times Frankie correctly or incorrectly uses the F sound by putting pluses or minuses, respectively, on a chart as activities are conducted. For Frankie to understand the mechanics of producing the F sound, the clinician will practice in the mirror with him, using modeling and imitation. Once Frankie masters this technique, the SLP will teach him how to say the F sound in isolation, where he can correctly say the sound by itself. The SLP will play a game with Frankie using bubbles as immediate reinforcement every time he correctly produces the F sound. Once Frankie can produce the sound in isolation with 80% accuracy, the clinician will have him say the sound in syllables. The clinician will play dinosaurs with the client, and he will use fee, fi, fo, fum as his catchphrase every time the action figure knocks over blocks. Another activity the clinician will conduct with the client is a fishing game where the client says "fi" every time he catches a fish. If he says it correctly, he gets to keep the fish. If he doesn't say it correctly, he has to throw it back and try again. Once the client can produce the F sound in syllables with 80% accuracy, then the clinician will have him say the sound in words. They will play a game where a starburst is hidden under a series of cups with words placed on top. Frankie will get to lift the cups up with under the words when he says correctly to find the starburst. One ethical issue may be that Frankie was not a part of the decision to enroll him in therapy. His parents and the clinician decided whether Frankie needed therapy. However, Frankie considers therapy as playtime given that he gets to play with toys and interact with the clinician like a playmate. The evaluation goes that the clinician will know if therapy is working by looking at Frankie's progress through the data recorded for the assessment and the data kept during each therapy session. The program may be successful because the clinician is implementing specific intervention strategies. She's teaching Frankie to produce the sound correctly and gradually teaching him to correctly use it in words through shaping. The program might not be successful because the duration may need to be extended according to how fast Frankie progresses in producing the F sound. He also may not react well to the reinforcement strategies used. If Frankie shows spontaneous recovery, where he resorts back to using a substituting sound, the clinician will go back to the mirror so Frankie can reevaluate his production of the F sound.